Hi, and welcome to Ladies of Another View. I'm back, and today we have April and Jan,
Hello.
and I'm Patty. Um, and we've got a very important topic today because June is, I feel like, shoved down our throat. It's Pride Month, and you just can't get away from it. There is no other topic, there's no other issue that dominates an entire month. Not even Christmas.
Nope.
So, to talk with us today, I have a special guest, Dr. John Grabowski. He is the author of a new book, Unraveling Gender, Battle of Our Sex Differences. Welcome to the show, John.
Great to be with you all. Thank you for having me.
I heard you on another talk show, and you just hit the nail on the head over and over again, because this isn't about hate speech. It's about science, right? Tell me what your book is about.
Sure. So it's about gender ideology. What is that? Where does it come from? What are its sources, both philosophically, scientifically, and then what's it doing in our culture? What's the impact on medicine, on law, on things like sports, women's sports and athletics? Just taking a look at the impact of this idea that our gender is a self-chosen subjective reality that really has little or nothing to do with our body or its sex.
You know, I want to add that you are a professor of moral theology at Catholic University of America, and there's very few places where you can say the things you're saying in moral theology or any kind of theology or philosophy and not lose your job, right?
I think that's true. Yeah, it's getting more and more difficult. The classroom, unfortunately, at many colleges and universities, is no longer a place where there is free speech.
And that's true even for Catholic and Christian universities where they've gone woke. Are you getting any kind of backlash?
I mean, I have not. The book's only been out for a few months. I haven't experienced that yet, although I have had some challenges in trying to sell the book for sure. But I mean, again, I think my university is a little different than a lot, and I'm grateful for that. There are places, even other Christian universities, Catholic universities, where it would be much harder to publish a book like this.
What do you think the biggest issue is in our society today, especially with our children? You know, because I know it's starting at such a young age. I changed my major 3 times in college, and I was an adult, right? You know, I could drive, I could drink, I could do all those things. But at 3 or 4 years old, we're letting our children pick if they want to be a cat or if they want to be a they. I don't even understand that one, but what do you think the biggest problem is? Do you cover that in the book?
Yes, it is. It's definitely something I talk about. And I think this really is kind of ground zero for the challenges that families and parents are facing, because this ideology is aggressive. It's really interesting. A few decades ago, the majority of people turning up at gender clinics were middle-aged men who this is what they decided to do, I guess, for their midlife crisis. They not happy with themselves, with their life, so I'm going to go make myself look like a woman. Today, the majority of people showing up at gender clinics are young people, particularly women. And our schools are more and more pushing children to reject the idea that there are 2 genders, 2 sexes, that sex is binary, and see themselves as gender fluid, gender questioning, gender non-binary. So we are actively indoctrinating children in this country and performing, I'm sad to say, medical experiments on them without really knowing the full picture of what we're doing.
Do you think that any of these children understand that it's differences versus desires versus actual choices?
Well, according to people promoting gender theory and gender ideology, all of those things get bundled together to make your gender, which is why Facebook 6, 7 years ago, introduced 70 different gender options. And if you don't identify with one of those, you can select another. It's why the United Nations is debating treaties that would recognize over 100 genders and see the failure to do so as a human rights violation. It's because we have this idea of gender as an individual self-chosen construct that puts together all of these different pieces and creates, therefore, all kinds of different possibilities.
Didn't we used to call that a personality? Truth.
Sure.
And
But
now
we
they're
also
sorry.
thought our personalities had a stable foundation, right? That was
Correct.
directly related to our bodies and our sex.
But now they're pushing us to not only acknowledge them, but to accept them. And if it's their reality, that's one thing. How do we allow for them to make it our reality?
And that's the problem. I mean, I think educational programs in our schools, in our libraries, and other things that purport to say what we're really trying to do is to teach children to be kinder to gender non-conforming peers. Well, that's a nice thing. But if you look at these programs a little more closely, Drag Queen Story Time in our public libraries, or the Purple Unicorn as a device for teaching about gender in schools, what's really being taught to kids is your gender is unrelated to your body. It is this feeling that you have about yourself. And that feeling really has little or nothing to do with your body and its biology.
So rather than steer them into reality, we go off into fantasy land with these children who don't know the difference between real life and fantasy.
Right.
And I know there's a number of studies before the world went woke and crazy. There's a number of studies that show children grow out of them. I actually helped 2 different women work on their books, and this wasn't what their book was about, but as an aside, they both wanted to be boys. Seriously, not just tomboys. They did not want to be girls. They wanted to be boys. They're happily married with 4 kids now. And they both have said, thank goodness I did not grow up in today's world. They would have started the drugs and the gender assignment surgeries. And we have some statistics up here that show if you just leave them alone, most kids grow out of it. Like the 2 women I know very well, they just grew out of it. They didn't have therapy, but they eventually, I guess, when adolescence hit, they realized they were girls and they wanted to be girls.
And again, this is what all of the studies, even studies by activists, will tend to find is that 80 to 90% of kids do outgrow gender discordance, even gender dysphoria of certain kinds by the time they reach adulthood with really little or no medical or psychological intervention. In some cases, psychological intervention can help, but questioning, having a unclear sense of self is not unusual for a child or an adolescent, or in our world today, even for a young adult to some degree.
Welcome back to Ladies of Another View. I'm back, and we're going to be rejoined with John Grabowski. He is a moral theology teacher and a philosophy teacher, professor at Catholic University of America. So we're talking about his new book. So first, let me welcome onto the show again, John. Thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely.
And let's throw up a cover of your book it's sold through Tan Books. You will not find it on Amazon unless it's through a third-party seller, because Amazon has discriminated against any books that challenges this notion that you can change your gender. They have published entire publishers who then none of their titles are allowed to be listed because we're not allowed to look at the science behind this, right?
Unfortunately, yeah. And it's not just Amazon, it's the other tech companies too that the day my book came out, my publisher tried to buy an ad for it on Facebook, and the ad was banned that day.
Wow.
So
Wow.
yeah, there's a bit of a blackout being enforced on at least part of the conversation by tech companies right now.
Well, I just want to say that I am happy that you went forward with the book and that you got it published and that you're speaking out because people need to know about this. And there's a lot of people out there that I don't want to say that they're blind to it, but they're just kind of numb from so much information that seems negative. And so they're shutting their eyes a little bit, don't you think?
I do think, but I think if you're a parent or a grandparent, you cannot afford to shut your eyes because this set of ideas is indoctrinating kids and taking kids who are secure in their sense of themselves as a boy or a girl, destabilizing that, and then creating a gender confused child. Yeah, and that's not a path we want to put our children on.
Right, because even kids, if you just left them alone, they would have no thought at all. They're like, I'm a boy, I'm having fun being a boy. But you put them into these situations. As a matter of fact, they have these supposed family-friendly drag queen shows where they're encouraging
Oxymoron.
families. Nothing friendly about it, nothing family-oriented, and they're encouraging you to bring your children. There's photo ops. Look at this. This was in Dallas, Texas. And oh, isn't this fun? And I want you to know this is at an adult bar that they said is usually pretty raunchy, and this was promoted as a good thing. It was on a news report. Isn't this fun? Isn't this cute? And they cleaned up the bar. They didn't have the normal raunchy stuff they have while they bring the kids in and they have them dancing with drag queens.
Imposing.
Well,
Why?
So you can see on the back wall, it says it's not going to lick itself. And there's alcohol, and there's nudity, and I don't know what else is going on because I wasn't there. And I have been to drag shows in the past, and there wasn't anything that could be put on regular cable news that happened there. There's really not. So I'm not sure what message this promotes because, number one, why is a kid in a bar?
Yes.
Right? I mean, that doesn't make any sense. I don't know what time of day this was. They were posing in front of a sign that is vulgar. It just doesn't make any sense.
They should be going fishing or, going to the zoo, but not this. This is so it's scary and sad. And, your first chapter, you talk about the battle and the dangers involved. What's happening in our culture that we can't even speak out against this?
Yeah, I mean, we at least the motto of some people seems to be free speech for me, but not for thee. So if you don't embrace this set of ideas, then yeah, there's a definite effort to silence people or even to cancel people, to get them kind of permanently silenced professionally or socially by ostracizing them, getting people fired. There is we as Americans, we take the right to free speech as a given. It's no longer a given. It's something we actually have to be vigilant and work for in the public square, in our classrooms, in our churches.
So it seems that people are looking for validation or maybe even justification for whatever perversion of the truth they believe in. And they're trying to get everybody else to either justify or validate who they think they are or how they feel or what they think is acceptable. And they're trying to make us all swallow it. So there has to be some type of way that we can draw a line in the sand. Do you have suggestions?
I mean, I first of all, I'll agree with your point that what goes often right now under the name of tolerance is anything but tolerant of views that dissent from it. So again, I think it's important for people who have a different perspective to use our voices while we have them, to educate ourselves about these issues. Again, as parents, really important that we understand what's going on in schools, that we understand what's going on in the media, in social media, and are on top of that so that we can protect our kids from what's coming into our homes. We can be vigilant. I think it starts with that, but then it also starts with engagement outside of our homes, in the public square, and raising our voices. Again, while we still have voices, we need to speak up and use them.
And sometimes it takes a risk. You know, I was just reading today, I don't remember the name of the baseball team, but one of the Major League Baseball teams, there were the pitchers gathered together. You're shaking your head, John. Did you read that? You might be able to give more
I
details.
think I know what you're referring to. Yeah, I think
And
I
they
saw.
said, because now with Pride, you know, June being the month of Pride, they have all the rainbows, but now they have flags for all these different representations of different kinds of sexual identities, just the whole gender thing, and they were supposed to wear something on their uniform to represent that. And some of the pitchers said, no, I'm all for treating everybody with equal dignity, but I don't have to advertise this. So they gathered together, and the team manager, owner said, okay, fine. But then there was a lot of backlash and anger. They were allowed not to have to wear these on their uniforms. But then you listen to the other side saying they shouldn't be allowed to do that. They are not, they're discriminating. But it isn't discriminating. And it isn't just we want you all to play along. It's that we want to indoctrinate. We want to create more people who are confused.
I mean, refusing to wear regalia with an ideology with which you disagree, that's not hateful, that's not intolerant. It's refusing to have speech forced on you that you don't agree with. So, I mean, again, we have these rights, we need to try to exercise them.
Well, in professional football, there was the player that was fined because he put "In God We Trust." He wore a headband and said that, and he was in trouble. Like, since when is one okay and not the other okay? Why don't my rights matter? And what I'd like to, it's our job to protect our children. As an adult, you can make whatever choices you want, but I don't need to know every choice that you're doing. And I really wish, honestly, with the gender battle that we have going on, tell me what you want. Tell us what rights you want so we can make it fair for everyone and move forward. Like, since when isn't everyone allowed to have an opinion?
Well, I feel like they are telling us what rights they want. They want all their rights,
they have
none of our rights. Only their opinion matters. And if we don't agree with their opinion, we're hateful, right?
Intolerant or transphobic. Yeah, those labels get deployed very quickly in question. And even in cases where people, J.K. Rowling was labeled a TERF, a trans-exclusionary radical feminist, just because she spoke up in defense of women's safety in public spaces, from biological men going into women's bathrooms and dressing rooms.
Welcome back to Ladies of Another View on Back, and we're welcoming back for another segment Professor John Grabowski, because we're just barely scratching the surface. And I'm going to give you a proper introduction of your title here. You are the author of Unraveling Gender, The Battle of Our Sex Differences, and you're a professor of moral theology and ethics at the School of Theology and Religious Studies at the Catholic University of America, where it's still a little corner of the world where it's still safe to say men are men and women are women, and he hasn't lost his job, so bravo.
No doubt.
We wanted to talk about this segment about women's safety, because this gender confusion isn't happening in a vacuum. It's affecting all of us, right?
Absolutely. If you're a woman simply because you identify as a woman and therefore can use any women's only space, whether it be locker rooms, restrooms, prisons, then you have biological males rubbing shoulders with women in very intimate spaces. Ryan Anderson has a law review article in which he chronicles dozens of cases of male sexual predators who pose as transgender women in order to gain access to women's restroom facilities, locker room facilities. We have cases of male inmates being because they identify as female, being transferred to women's prisons and engaging in sexual assault of other prisoners. So this really does have profound ramifications for women's safety in our society.
Well, there was a couple women it was reported that are pregnant in a women's prison. Well,
yeah, supposedly by another woman inmate.
Yes, by
Right.
another woman inmate. Yeah.
Well, we do
right.
have instances too where there are big chain stores that immediately cowered to this kind of thinking. And they're like, nope, everybody gets to go into everybody's bathroom. And pretty soon we are just going to have a restroom, period. No sex differences, no protection or privacy for anyone. And locally, I believe the story that you had told us was there was someone that identified as a woman that obviously was not, that went into the women's dressing room and was trying to film the women.
Was
changing.
videotaping, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were
And
arrested.
got arrested, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
So it's not that it's something that we're imagining, but and I guess I'm a little bit confused because some of those big corporate people, and I don't know if we're naming names here, but I have not shopped with these people for over 2 years because of their stance. And I think that's another way that people can speak with their dollars about
Yeah.
what they believe.
Well, I'm not afraid to say it. It was Target because it was in the news. They weren't shy about, okay, you know, we're going to allow transgender people. They were one of the first ones. And that very summer in Bismarck, North Dakota, there was a man videotaping in the dressing room. He was arrested for it. So we don't have our safe spaces. I don't want men in our dressing rooms and our bathrooms. I don't care what they identify. And you know, how much hardship is it? They've got stalls. You have dressing rooms. There is no hardship. If you were born with male chromosomes and you are male, it's not going to hurt you to use those spaces. But if you come into the women's area and you got different parts, it's like it's not safe for us. We don't feel comfortable.
And Loudoun County was a good example too. Sorry.
Especially women who have suffered from sexual assault or sexual
Yes.
violence, right? Those, like J.K. Rowling, those are women who are especially sensitive here. But it really should be common sense that you shouldn't have men and women together in those kinds of public spaces.
So for those that don't recall, J.K. Rowling was the one that wrote the Harry Potter series, and she spoke out on what exactly?
She made a number of public comments on social media, but also more formal statements, basically saying she was all for people who identify as transgender having their rights and dignity protected, but she's also for protecting the safety of women, especially from sexual predators. But again, the fact that she said positive things about respecting the rights of everyone wasn't enough. She was attacked and vilified as a TERF, a trans exclusionary radical feminist.
I have trouble keeping up with all of these names and initials, and they're saying 70 genders, and it started out as LBGTQ. I mean, I can't even
keep
get them
adding
all.
letters,
And now
yeah.
it's pluses and ones and A, and I don't know what they stand for. And
Usually
so
there's an I and an A and a plus on the end of that set
that's
of
what it
letters.
is. You know,
So
it used to be.
intersex, allies, and others.
Oh, others. Well, others, does that not include me? It used
Depends
to be.
on whether or not you're an ally.
And I hate to say used to be because everybody just thinks it's age related and that I'm looking for the good old days. I am just looking for non-perversion of truth. They're taking something where a man can say he's a woman and therefore a lesbian, where it is still a man that is infatuated at minimum with a woman. Is there no logical thinking with any of this?
Well, if we discount the body and if we discount biology, then there's no real. We've lost the idea of our identity being rooted in our physical makeup, and so we're kind of adrift here. We don't have a clear sense of who we are. So we've lost our telos.
It is scary where we're going, and we're running out of time. But there's two things I wanted you to touch on before you go today. One is sports, and if you could just say a little comment about that, and the other is I want you to talk about your Chapter 7, the long defeat, and explain what that means. But sports
Sure.
first.
So sports first. I mean, even Caitlyn Jenner, right, who was a Olympic gold medal male athlete who went through transitioning procedures and is now identified as a woman, has said it is crazy to allow biological males, even if they've been on hormonal therapy, to compete in women's sports, because what will happen is we're not just going to have one man standing on top of the podium, one biological man who identifies as a woman, but women will just be pushed off the podium, out of the pool, out of the sports altogether. We've all seen the images of Leah Thomas, right, who competed in NCAA sporting events as a woman, having been on cross-sex hormones for the requisite number of months, according to the NCAA, but who still has the physical frame of Michael Phelps.
Yes.
And that's who's competing against women in the pool.
Makes no sense.
It's not fair because men are, and I'm an athlete, you know, men are anatomically superior when it comes to sports. That's why there aren't any females in the NFL or the NHL. And it's just the truth. Larger lungs, larger heart, larger muscle fibers by 16 to 66%.
Yeah, April is a marathoner, so she doesn't want to compete against men, for sure.
I don't blame her.
Now, we only have 1 minute left, and so by the long defeat, I think we're living it. We're feeling like, what the heck is going on here? Give us some words of hope before you leave us.
Sure. The phrase is from J.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. Galadriel says it at one point, and what she's talking about is how, you know, in Tolkien's mythology, human beings and elves alone can never overcome the powers of evil that kind of keep coming at them throughout history. But so in that sense, we've been fighting against these ideas since the beginning of Christianity. These are kind of dualistic, Gnostic ideas. But again, as people of faith, we know that human history isn't just written by humans, it's written by God. And so the victory isn't ours to win or lose ultimately. So yeah, we have to keep doing what we can to protect our families, to try to keep our place and our voice in our culture. But we're not alone in this effort to maintain sanity.
right.
And as long as we
Yep.
know we're creatures of a loving God, we're where we should be.